Thanks for tuning into No Wine in No Time. I'm your host, Dave, and today we're going to explore the fascinating world of kosher wines. So if we're celebrating traditional Jewish festive holidays, things like the Passover or Hanukkah, no doubt a kosher wine is going to be the center point for any one of those celebrations. Now, what exactly is a kosher wine? Well, it's a wine that's produced in the strictest of Hebrew laws, and the entire process from the vineyard all the way through the fermentation, vitification, bottling, and distribution is 100% controlled and supervised by Sabbath observant Jews. So that's on a very high level what exactly is a kosher wine. So when we start to look at some of the nuances of kosher wine laws, we have to get past some of the common kosher wines, things like Manischewitz and Mogen David. And what I like to do is focus on kind of the birthplace of kosher wines, and that's wines produced in the country of Israel. Now in Israel, there's a law called the Orla Law, and the Orla Law basically states that when planting a new vineyard, for the first 3 years, those grapes cannot be used to produce a kosher wine. In the 4th year, those grapes can be harvested, but they cannot be used for kosher wine purposes. In the 5th year and beyond, those grapes can be used to produce kosher wines. Now, there also is a law in Israel called the Shemitah Law, and the Shemitah Law says that in every 7th year, that vintage, to be a true kosher wine, cannot be distributed. So let me give you an example. Some of the more recent vintages that fell on the 7th year is 2001, 2008, 2015. So in a true kosher wine, we would never see those particular vintages on the bottle. So how exactly do we identify a kosher wine bottle? Clearly on the back of the bottle, on the label, there will be symbols, letters, words that basically spell out the kosher nature of the wine itself. Now, but because those wines needed to be processed 100% by Sabbath observant Jews, there needed to be a way to kind of reduce that a little bit, because in the real world, you can't control the process from beginning to end. So the Jewish community came up with a different category of wine called mavushal. And a mavushal wine is one that has been heated somewhat. So basically they're taking a normal kosher wine, heating it between 165 and 194 degrees Fahrenheit for a given period of time. So we're certainly heating the wine, but we're not boiling the wine. At that point, the wine is cooled, bottled, and it becomes a mavushal wine. Now, some of the problems with mavushal wine, when a wine is heated like that, it becomes less stable and a little less age-worthy. But in the eyes of the Jewish community, now that wine can be handled by non-Jews and still remain a mavushal wine. I like to focus on Israel when we start to talk about the real, true kosher wines. So when we look at Israel, there's an ancient scripture, and it's Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 8, where the Lord gave the community of Israel 7 gifts from heaven. And one of those 7 gifts is called the fruit of the vine. And that certainly is a reference to wine. So one of the 7 sacred gifts given by God to the Israelis is the gift of wine. So adherence to these very strict kosher laws is very important in this particular category. So where is Israel today? A fairly small producer in the eyes of the world. There are 35 different commercial wineries in Israel, and there are 250 boutique wineries in Israel, and combined they produce about 36 million bottles of wine annually. So a very small percentage of the world's total production, but an incredible lineage and an incredible history that dates back over 4,000 years. You talk about the importance of the wine to the Jewish community and how that crosses over into Christianity. If you think of Jesus' first documented miracle, it was the wedding of Cana. when they ran out of wine at the celebration, and he turned water into wine so that that particular wedding celebration could continue. So let's go ahead and taste a kosher wine and see how it differs. The grapes themselves are very similar varietals that we're used to. All the common varietals from around the world grow in the state of Israel. So the one I picked for you today is one from Rakanti. And this is Rakanti's Yasmin Red, and it's a 2017 vintage. Remember, 2015 we would not have a vintage, so true kosher wine. What I'm really trying to figure out, since this wine is kosher, does it vary significantly from wines that we're familiar with? This is 80% Cabernet Sauvignon and 20% Merlot. So it's not that different from, say, a California red blend or something we might find in Bordeaux. So let's test it and see if it's similar. So the first S that we're going to explore is our sight. So we're going to go ahead and look at this wine and see if indeed it looks different. It's very rich, dark in color. Certainly a deep purple with a little bit of garnet around the edges. It is opaque and you certainly can't see through it. Let's swirl it and give it some aromas. The aromas coming out of this particular wine are a lot of crushed blackberry, a little cassis, certainly an herbal nature, a little bit of black raspberry as well, and I'm certainly smelling some vanilla and some toast from the oak that this wine was aged in. So let's go ahead and give it a taste. Across this palate, this wine presents itself very much as a Cab Merlot blend. I have flavors of blackberry compote, a little bit of savory herbs. Certainly we have some red raspberry coming through, some black raspberry, some plummy nature to it. And on the back side of the palate, we have the beautiful smooth vanilla caramel flavor that we would expect from a little bit of oaking. So I would encourage everybody, if you have never tasted a true Israeli kosher wine, expand your wine palate, go out and give one a try. They're very reasonably priced, the quality control is exceptional, and the presentation is really quite beautiful. So I'm going to enjoy the rest of this Rakanti. Please tune in next time, and soon you'll know wine in no time.